They made fun of Keanu Reeves. They laughed at him for being quiet. They pushed him to the back like he didn't matter. But when Damian Cross came to help, everything started to change. Justice was coming. Before we begin this story, tell us where you're watching from. Write your country in the comments and let's see how far this story can go. Outside a big fancy building in Geneva, the air was cold and shiny, just like everything around. Drivers stood tall in their suits. Women in soft gloves held little purses like golden treasures. Inside, a fancy auction was about to start. Every step on the shiny floor echoed like it was proud. Then he came in. Keanu Reeves. Not wearing a tuxedo. Not wearing fancy shoes. Just a gray hoodie, dark jeans, and old hiking shoes that still had dirt from the mountain trail he walked that morning. He didn't have an invite. Just a small notebook and a wooden box held carefully under his arm. The security guards didn't say anything. Until a man named Victor Langford came. Victor didn't just walk. He moved smoothly like he was floating. He had silver hair and a sharp look like a knife. He wore a dark, expensive suit and a shiny watch that cost more than most houses. He didn't yell. He just raised one eyebrow. Keanu gave a polite nod. "I'm here for the Horizon auction," he said softly. Victor tilted his head. "Do you have a badge, Mr. Reeves?" The name, Keanu Reeves, might be big in movies, but not here. Not in this place where only names written on gold or passed down from rich families mattered. Victor looked at Keanu from top to bottom like the hoodie had hurt his feelings. "The museum is 2 streets down. Lovely place for people who like watches," Victor said. "I'm not a tourist," Keanu replied quietly, still holding the box like it was special. Victor gave a thin smile. "You don't look ready for this kind of event." There was a short silence. Someone behind Keanu laughed. Another worker came up and whispered something in Victor's ear. Victor looked at a guest list. Something changed in his eyes, but he stayed calm. "You're on the list," Victor said, even though he didn't like it. He told a young helper, "Please take Mr. Reeves to the extra seats." The helper didn't look happy but led Keanu down a hallway. They walked past big rooms with champagne and ropes and shiny lights. They didn't go into the main gallery. Instead, they walked into a small room with no decorations. It had folding chairs and smelled like cleaning spray. Keanu sat down without a word. He opened his notebook. Inside were careful drawings of tiny watch parts made long ago. No one noticed. From the big room came laughter like claps. Far behind, Victor whispered to a guest. "Some men are born to wear time. Others just show up late." Keanu didn't say anything. The wooden box he held had something very special inside. A watch no one had ever seen before. The auction room looked like a golden egg. Everything was made to look fancy. Shiny bronze, soft red carpets, and seats like an opera house. Soft piano music floated in the air. Waiters in white gloves walked around holding glasses on silver trays. Keanu sat far away from all that. Not in the middle. Not even near. He sat in the overflow area, which meant extra space. It was just some folding chairs near the hallway to the bathrooms. Sometimes the smell of cleaning spray came by. Waiters walked past him with trays of food. Keanu didn't mind. He looked closely at the auction book in his lap. It had pictures of rare watches, each one more beautiful than the last. He touched the page with one special watch, the Chrono Oren 1911. He knew it very well. He had studied it for years, made his own version, and dreamed of seeing the real one. Tonight, it was here. A group of rich guests walked by. One man in a striped vest and shiny cufflinks glanced at Keanu and said, "Who lets bloggers in here?" Keanu looked up and gave a small nod. The man didn't know if he was being respected or made fun of, so he just turned away. A waiter came up to Keanu with a tray. Instead of a fancy glass like the others, he gave Keanu a paper cup with warm bubbly water. "Sorry, sir," he whispered. "That's what they told me to give people without a bidder card." Keanu smiled kindly. "Thank you." Across the room, Victor stood near the stage, holding his champagne like a sniper holds a gun. He looked around the room and saw Keanu. He leaned toward a woman next to him and whispered, "See the man by the back door? Looks like he came straight from a hike." The woman giggled behind her glove. "I thought this was a special guest list," she whispered. "Oh, it is," Victor said. "But even the best safes let in a loose screw sometimes." The people around him laughed. Keanu turned another page in his book. His eyes stopped at something. Lot 47, Chronos Sapphire. No picture. No story. Just a line, details available on request. He closed the book and placed his hands on top. Somewhere, a bell rang. The lights got dim. The auction was starting. Keanu didn't move. He didn't breathe faster. But he was ready. The sad seat at the auction. The auctioneer had a soft voice like a gentle song. "Lot 11, he said. The Chrono Oren 1911. Starting at 240,000 francs. People made quiet sounds. Some lifted paddles to bid. This watch was special, built long ago for a Swiss general and still working like magic. Keanu leaned forward for the first time. He opened his notebook and drew quickly, his pen dancing. He looked at the watch on the screen. He saw the tiny marks, the wear, the beauty. Then someone spoke. The tourist found something shiny. Keanu didn't need to look. He knew the voice. Victor. Victor walked from the VIP section like a king visiting the commoners. People followed him, whispering and smiling. "You're drawing it?" Victor asked, his eyes sparkling. "That's cute. Are you building one at home with paper clips and your sad memories?" Some laughed. "Not fully," Keanu said softly. "Just watching." Victor bent down like he was looking at a school project. "You know, they sell fake ones in the museum shop. Cheaper. Comes with a plastic band." He stood up. Keanu looked at him calmly. Not angry. Not smiling. Just calm. It made Victor feel a little nervous. So he pushed more. "Do you always bring a wooden box to auctions?" he asked. "Or is that where you keep your last piece of pride?" The crowd laughed harder. A woman in heels whispered, "Is he someone?" "Maybe a blogger," another said. "Or a YouTube guy who reviews cheap watches." "Probably here for the snacks," Victor added. "They always sneak in." The words felt mean. The air didn't change, but it felt heavier, like something bad was starting. A young waiter nearby looked at Keanu, then looked away. Still, Keanu said nothing. He stared at the Chrono Oren. His pen stopped moving. He could feel their eyes now. They were watching him. Not just Victor. Everyone. They wondered who he was, why he was here, and how long they could be cruel before someone stopped them. But no one stopped them. Not yet. So the laughter went on, mean and slow. By the time Lot 14 sold for 1.2 million francs, the room had changed. Not the walls. The people. Now they weren't just watching watches. They were watching him. The man in the hoodie. The man with the notebook. The man who didn't smile. Didn't drink. Didn't belong. Whispers started again. Is he pressed? No badge. No camera. Maybe an actor? No. A faker. Victor smiled and said softly to an assistant. He's not on the legacy list. I checked. That was the moment. Now everyone wanted to talk, loud enough for others to hear, but quiet enough to pretend they didn't mean it. I saw him outside smoking. He was drawing like a little kid. Probably stealing ideas to sell on the internet. Or worse. No one said what worse meant. But they didn't have to. Victor took a sip of his drink and smiled. He liked this. He liked watching someone feel small. He liked being the one who made it happen. And then he saw a chance. An old man, someone important, was coming next. Clara walked by Keanu's chair and stopped. She saw a small wooden box next to him and looked curious. "What's inside the box?" she asked kindly. Keanu gave a little smile. "Just something I made." Suddenly, a man named Victor walked over. His voice was sweet and slippery. "Ah, yes. He brought his own things," he said. The woman looked confused. "What do you mean?" "He's someone who taught himself," Victor said slowly. "He thinks we'll change the auction just for him." "I didn't say that," Keanu answered calmly. Victor laughed and looked around the room. "My mistake. He just came to watch," he said loudly. Then he looked at Keanu's notebook. "And write notes like he's a sidewalk scholar." People laughed. It was a little louder this time. Not nice laughter. They were laughing at Keanu. Keanu slowly closed his notebook. He placed it on his lap and gently rested his fingers on the wooden box. "You're shaking," Victor said in a low voice. "I'm not," Keanu answered, still looking straight ahead. Victor leaned in closer. He whispered, "No one's coming for you, Mr. Hoodie. No cameras, no cheers. Just time passes until you get tired of being invisible." The auctioneer banged his gavel. The room clapped, but it wasn't for Keanu. It never had been. Not yet. From a hallway nearby, the smell of old wood, like fancy furniture, came through. There were red ropes at the entrance. A small golden sign said, "By invitation only." That meant only special people could go inside. The room was called the Vault Room. It wasn't written on the auctions program. Most people didn't even know it existed. That's where they kept the most secret and special things. Old watches no one had seen in public, watches worn by kings or hidden in secret places. Keanu stood near the entrance. He didn't try to go in. He just looked at the door. Then he turned to a young man who worked there. The man had sharp cheekbones and kind eyes. "Is there a way I can see the vault room?" Keanu asked politely. The young man looked at his tablet, then back at Keanu. "One moment, sir," he said, stepping away and talking into his earpiece. Before Keanu could move, a mean voice came from behind. "Oh no, no, no. This will never happen," it said. Two people behind Keanu laughed. One of them pulled out their phone like they were pretending to take a photo. "Caption this," he said. "Man tries to sell his childhood in a wooden box." Keanu held the box tighter, but his voice stayed calm. "I wasn't trying to go in. I just asked." Victor leaned in again. "You know what this room is, don't you?" he whispered. "It's a museum about time. And time doesn't wait for ghosts like you." Then he spoke louder so the staff could hear. "Please take him back to the regular room. We don't want him getting lost." Keanu didn't argue. He walked away quietly. His silence was stronger than shouting. People watched him and whispered, "Why doesn't he say anything?" Victor walked behind him like a lion. He wore a fancy black suit and had two guests following him like perfume. He gave the worker a sharp look. "You're wasting time helping him?" The young man stood straight. He asked respectfully. "You thought wrong," Victor said quickly. "This room isn't for tourists with school projects." He looked at Keanu's box. "What's in there anyway?" "A sundial." Another guest laughed. Maybe he knows he doesn't belong here. But they were wrong. Only time would tell, and time was still ticking. The auction kept going. One item after another. People raised their hands and bought things easily. It was like a fancy dance made of money. Everyone enjoyed it. But Keanu, sitting quietly in a dark corner, felt like he didn't belong. He didn't clap. He didn't speak. He was like a quiet shadow in the room. No one looked at him now. Not because they were mean, but because they forgot he was even there. He sipped the last bit of his warm sparkling water and placed the cup under his chair. His notebook was still closed. The wooden box hadn't moved. He hadn't written anything since the 14th item. Across the room, Victor was still acting like a king. He laughed too loud. He made big hand movements. But he always kept one eye on Keanu. He didn't like that Keanu stayed. He didn't like that Keanu wasn't angry. Quiet people are harder to forget. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer said, we are taking a short break. The final 5 items will begin soon. People stood up, stretched, and chatted. Champagne was poured. Staff members moved around like quiet ghosts. Keanu stood too. Not fast. Not flashy. Just stood. He walked to a far corner of the room where old photos hung on the wall. They showed black and white pictures of people making watches long ago. One photo showed a young man working carefully with tools. Next to it stood an old man with a white beard. His name tag said Edmund. He was a helper for the vault room. Keanu stopped beside him and gave a small nod. Quiet night for you, Edmund said. Keanu smiled. Something like that. Edmund pointed to the photo. Do you know who that is? Keanu nodded. Alaric Thorne. A master watchmaker. He used sandpaper instead of soft cloth because he believed time should have a rough edge. Edmund's eyes sparkled. You know your ghosts. Keanu looked at the photo. Ghosts know me. Edmund chuckled. They don't talk like that anymore. No, Keanu said. They don't listen like they used to. Edmund didn't ask for his name or why he was there. He just looked at the wooden box in Keanu's hand. You made something, Edmund said. Keanu nodded. Edmund looked him in the eyes. Then he said, You'll know when it's time. Then Edmund walked away through a door that said staff only. Keanu stood alone again, looking at the photo of the old watchmaker. Behind him, the room was full of talking and laughing. But here in the corner, even the clocks felt quiet. The chandelier dimmed a little, just enough for everyone to feel it. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer said, now we show our final item, lot 47. The room went silent, like a church. 2 workers pulled back a red curtain. Behind it was a watch. But it didn't look like the others. No gold. No shiny jewels. No famous brand name. This one was raw and strong, made of brushed silver. The gears inside were visible and seemed to float like magic. The second hand ticked slowly, like a heartbeat after being hurt. It was beautiful and strange. Provenance private, the auctioneer said. Designer unknown. More information upon request. People whispered. No name? At this price? Victor leaned forward. Who allowed this? He asked. No-name pieces are for beginners. But then people started to bid. 400,000. 450. 500. Victor laughed. Look at them. Falling for a mystery. Probably made by some intern. He stood up and walked toward the stage. I have a question, he said loudly. Everyone stopped to listen. Is this even certified? Or is it just a trick to impress internet fans? He looked at the crowd. You've all seen the man with the wooden box, right? Sitting there quietly? Maybe he can tell us if it's worth anything. People gasped. All eyes turned to Keanu. He looked up. The lights finally shined on him. Victor smiled meanly. Sir, would you like to share your notes? After all, you've been writing like a reviewer. Keanu stood up slowly. At that moment, the big doors at the back of the room opened. A man walked in. Tall, strong, calm. It was Damian Cross, dressed in a black suit. He didn't say a word as he walked toward Keanu. Victor blinked. He looked nervous. Damian stopped near Keanu and said, "It's time." Keanu picked up the wooden box and walked forward. The man everyone had laughed at was now the one they all watched. The room changed. It felt colder, quieter. Damian's steps echoed like music. Some people whispered, "Is that Damian Cross? The famous director?" He walked to the front, looked at the auctioneer, and gave a small nod. Then he turned to everyone. "Before you bid again," Damian said calmly, "I need to correct something." The room got even quieter. Victor didn't move. Damian pointed to the special watch. "This wasn't made to be sold," he said. "It wasn't made to shine or win fans." He looked at Victor. "It was made to show that even after pain, someone can still create beauty." Then he pointed at Keanu. "I've known him for years. I've seen him get hurt. I've seen him rebuild. I've seen him study not just movies, but time, movement, and people." Keanu stopped beside him. "This watch," Damian said louder, "was made with him. Every scratch and screw is part of his story." Everyone went still. "You made fun of him," Damian continued. "His hoodie, his silence, the way he didn't fit in." He smiled coldly. "But what you really made fun of was your own ignorance." Keanu opened the wooden box. Inside was a second watch, just like the one on stage, but not finished. It looked burned and raw. "This," Damian said, "is the first version. The pain before the beauty." He placed a hand on Keanu's shoulder. "And you made him sit near the bathroom." Victor opened his mouth, but no words came. The auctioneer took a deep breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "Lot 47's co-designer is Keanu Reeves." People clapped. At first, softly. Then louder. Then everyone stood. Keanu didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just stood there, calm. The same people who laughed now looked away. Some even looked ashamed. A young woman from earlier walked over. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I don't need an apology," Keanu replied. He looked at the glowing watch on stage. "That watch is enough of an apology." Damian watched the room. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. The young worker came back. "Mr. Reeves, would you like to visit the vault room now?" Keanu looked at the hallway. Then he shook his head. "No," he said kindly. "I think I'll stay here." The worker smiled. "Of course, sir." The room shifted. Not in shape, but in feeling. People now wanted to be near Keanu. They remembered seeing him. They wished they had spoken to him earlier. But Keanu didn't want praise. He didn't take pictures. When someone asked for an autograph, he pointed to the rough watch. "That's the only mark that matters," he said. Victor finally moved. He walked toward the exit. No one stopped him. No one cared. The lights grew bright again. The music played softly. Keanu sat back in his seat. This time, no one offered him a paper cup. People didn't gather around a loud voice anymore. They gathered around a quiet man who built something that couldn't be ignored. Respect isn't about shouting. It's about building something real. If you liked this story, Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fun adventures and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.